What's up, everybody? This is Simon, and on this episode of The Ideal Hour, I have a very special guest here today. His name is Todd Nepola. Now, Todd is a husband of Alexia on The Real Housewives of Miami. He's also an avid commercial real estate investor, a successful one. He also has a property management company and has written a book, Keeping It Real, on commercial real estate. Today, he's going to share his commercial real estate knowledge with us, his life lessons, and everything in between. I'm so excited, and I thank you, Todd, for coming on the show. Todd, thank you for coming on the show and taking the time to share your life experiences and how you got here. And I want to do a little bit more of an icebreaker. I went on your Instagram channel, I think this morning, and I saw that you bought your first property at the age of 25. I bought my first property at the age of 25. It was a condo in San Francisco. I'm not going to go into the condo right now because San Francisco's turned a corner and I can't rent it or sell it, which is something of a negative right now. We're not going to talk about that, but I thought that was pretty cool and something we had in common. So thank you for coming on the show. Let's talk about how you got into real estate.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, Simon. I really appreciate the opportunity. And I appreciate that you say you watch my wife's show, because so many men always say, I only watch it because my wife makes me. And the wife is going, it's not true.
Yeah.
And the good news is it starts again on Bravo November 1st. I think it is a first or second Wednesday. So whatever day that is, the new season's coming out, season 6.
I can't wait. And I'll
just watch.
I'll comment on that. You know, I enjoy the Miami one, and particularly that one because Miami has exploded so much, and South Florida and Florida in general has exploded during the pandemic. It's become a place that everyone wants to go to. It's a place that I personally see myself potentially retiring in or moving or having a footprint. And that show's fun to watch because in the Bay Area where I'm from, it's sleepy town. You know, people go to sleep around 9 o'clock. You guys are going out there at 11 or 12. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about how you got into real estate. It seems to be a big part of who you are in life and how you got to the level you're at.
Yeah, so after I graduated college, that was the 1990s, mid-90s, everybody wanted to be, not everybody, but I certainly wanted to be in Wall Street. That's where it was. That was the days of Wall Street, the movie with Gordon Gekko, and seemed really cool. So the first thing I did is I became a stockbroker, and from there I pivoted into some investment banking. And I was doing well. I was certainly doing very well for a guy, you know, I was at that time 21, 22 years old. But I always knew that I was only going to get paid based on commissions and trades. And it didn't have longevity because I said, I'll have to work forever. So it kind of drew me to find a path of what people now refer to as cash flow. But to me back then, it was, how could I have investments that could help me retire? So I looked at everything back then. I was looking at everything from payphones and ATM machines and anything you could think of. But as I was driving by a lot of times, this was the mid-90s, people didn't really want to own properties. I kept on seeing a beautiful warehouse property for sale. And back then it just had a for sale sign. So I called the sign, I talked to them. It was actually a bank out of Canada, and they foreclosed on the property. And they said, yeah, we have it and we'll lend you on it if you want to buy it, but we want to sell it. So they wanted $600,000. I negotiated them all the way down to $575,000. And I felt like I made my first $25,000 there. But I bought the deal. It wasn't that I had a vision at that point in time, but being some real estate guy or one day owning a management company, owning so much real estate, I just figured out that if I bought this property and paid off the mortgage in 20 years, I was 25 at the time. I said at 45, I'd be able to retire with this. So I bought the first one, and within 6 months, we filled the property up. It had some vacancies. The existing leases had to be rewritten because there was a foreclosure. So we rewrote those leases. We cleaned the property up. It was a new property, so we cleaned it up as best we could. And December that same year, 6 months later, we refinanced it. It appraised for $800,000, so I got $600,000 back. So I got all my money back, plus I think it was like $12,000, $13,000 after closing costs. And at that point, this was 1995, 98. The property at that point in time was still $5,000 a month cash flow positive after the mortgage was.
Wow.
And I said, I'm hooked. And I went out and bought another and another and another. And here we are 25 years later.
So it sounds like you added value to that property, renegotiated some leases or had to reduce some leases to add value, and then leveraged the property to buy your second or third and so forth and so on property. Is that correct?
100% correct.
Is that I've done that a few times over. Now in the Bay Area, it's very similar to Miami. I think we had a boom that's a little bit before your boom, or you guys had several booms, I would say. But I've done that and owned several properties. Is that a good way, while we're on that topic, to really build up your real estate portfolio? Constantly leverage, invest in another property as a tangible asset.
Yeah, for me, it's worked very well, and that's what I recommend people do. A lot of people want to buy real estate, and I've come across this over the many, many years I've been doing this, and they want something out of the real estate. So they'll say, well, I want to buy this property, and if it throws off $5,000 a month, I'm going to go buy a vacation home, or I'm going to buy a boat.
Mhm.
I just believe you got to keep reinvesting that money into more and more real estate, into renovating your properties and buying more. So I've done without a lot of those luxuries because they don't excite me as much. And I kept on buying more and more real estate. But
You know what? I love that. I need to, like, just you saying that, I need to switch my mindset to passing up on a few Rolexes or something and really just saying, hey, what do I really want to pass down to the family, or et cetera? That's great. All right, let's talk about some of the biggest challenges and rewards in being a commercial real estate investor and an entrepreneur such as yourself.
But what happened to me is, and this is one of the lessons I like to share with everybody, is I was very young. And then when 2000 hit, it's people who were around then remember, that's when the tech bubble burst.
Yep.
Prior to that, it was kind of like cryptocurrencies a couple of years ago. Everything went straight up. So I kind of thought I was a genius because every stock I bought went up. And then when it stopped going up, I was paying managers more money to manage my properties than I was earning. So at that point in time in 1999, 2000, I decided I'd stop being a broker and I'd exclusively manage my properties, which was great because I was also single and everything was, easier. But then I got married and I had a kid, then I had another kid, then I had private school tuition, and I was living off a lot of the proceeds from the real estate.
Yeah.
We all know what happened. 2008 hit, and now I have a family and mortgages and multiple cars, and the properties were always fine. But what happened was my income was coming down a lot because rents were going from 2,000 to 1,500, 1,500 to 1,000.
Yeah.
So the properties never got at risk because I wasn't over leveraged, but I was burning through savings. And that's when I really pivoted my business a lot into the third party management. And that's when I vowed that I will not use my real estate money to pay my personal bills anymore. And from that moment on, I virtually never used my real estate again.
Wow. So so it sounds to me that you created a property management company. So you had another passive income of not only having your properties, but also you would manage other properties as well. Is that correct?
Correct. That's what we still do to this day.
All right. You and I need to talk about property management on a separate call in the future, or a second podcast, because that's pretty cool. And I totally understand what you're saying, because I feel like a lot of people do over leverage, and they don't plan accordingly for. And I'm not saying you over leverage, but I personally have been in that experience myself as a young entrepreneur. My dad is a tailor, and I feel like a lot of times people try to do that next investment, but then a hard time comes along, like 2000, 2008, the crypto crash you mentioned, which even I invested in and lost money, or got even, I should say, somewhat even. But you definitely never want to do that. And I made a video on my YouTube channel, which has about 25,000 subscribers. How much money should you have for a hard time? Because you mentioned you were going through your savings to pay off things. What would you say is a good amount of money for someone to keep X times many months to really go through a tough period? Because you never know what happens, right?
You really don't. And that's a fantastic question. I'm certainly no financial advisor and don't want to pretend to be one. So it's a very personal thing. For me, my thing has always been, I don't like recurring expenses. And luckily, I wasn't really over leveraged, as I said, when the property market hit the skids, but my personal life was expensive. So that side of it got expensive, but my business side was still okay. So I was making less money. But with that being said, even to this day, I'm 50 years old. I still don't want to have any responsibilities with, second, third, fourth homes. I don't want to have recurring bills of boats and airplanes and helicopters, because when it's recurring, you're committed. Now, I'll have no problem going, like you mentioned before, buying a Rolex. That's easy. That's a one-off. You bought it, you know what it cost, move on. You're not forced to buy it every single month. So if God forbid you have a slow month next month or 2 months from now, you're not worried about how you're paying for the next Rolex. You're just not buying one. But if you went out and leased, 2 Lamborghinis and needed $10,000 every single month, you got to figure out how to make that money, and that's stressful. So I don't like recurring expenses. Only
I like that. I like that. If you could afford it, buy it outright. Otherwise, for those toys, don't do it. Is what it sounds like. Very good point. I don't own an exotic car, thank God, probably for that reason. Although I've been close a few times. Back to real estate. Is real estate the best way to become a millionaire? There's some studies on this, but in your mind, is this the fastest, best way to become a millionaire?
The fastest and best, I certainly can't answer because I know right now there's some 15-year-old kid who's going to sell $40 million worth of stuff on YouTube. So that's probably the fastest and best way.
Yeah.
But for the average person, the person who didn't go to Harvard or MIT and isn't a genius, and like I tell everybody, I went to community college. I was nobody special. And if you watch my videos, I'm still doing all the same stuff, but everything I'm doing, anybody could do. So with that, it is the path of least resistance. It's also fantastic because when you earn money in real estate and you build equity in a property, it doesn't go in your hand. And what I've learned over time is that if you have a brokerage account, whether it's cryptocurrency, stocks, bonds, it doesn't really matter. Even if it's your YouTube channel, and every month somebody's showing you the bank balance and it's liquid, and your bank balance goes from 1 million to 2 million to 3 million, you start feeling really rich. And guess what? You can write a check. Yeah. I can't do that with my real estate, so I don't feel that. I don't get a statement. I can't go on my iPhone every day and see the value of my portfolio, but I can on my stocks. So it starts to mess with your head. Whereas the real estate, the reason guys get rich is it's very slow money and they don't think about it, because I can't go to to Rolex right now and say, I want a property. I'll write a check against my property. It doesn't work that way, but I can write a check for my Goldman Sachs account. So that's the difference.
Yeah. And, I want to add to that. For me, I've always, owning several properties myself, I've always felt like it's such a less volatile investment as well in some cases. It really takes a big turn in the economy or something crazy to offset what you feel you still have in the back pocket that you could get rid of. And, we mentioned Rolex several times as well. I do feel that way about Rolex. You mentioned it's a one-time purchase, but buying the right Rolex as well, and I have some videos out on my channel, that's also an investment. When I buy that Rolex, I know that my Rolex is going to sell for what I bought it for, if not more, versus maybe a Lamborghini that, although the car market had its peak, is back down to where it is, in reality, and it's going to depreciate. Real estate's solid as well. All right, very cool. What are some of the most important things you consider before you buy a commercial property?
Well, that's another great question. What I look at in deals is not necessarily what is the deal today. I have to look at it, what can I do with the property? So I'm less concerned with, I'm buying it for what it is, but really the price I'm paying is to know what I could do in the future. So I'm looking for opportunities. I'm not going to go out. I'm not the guy who's going to buy the Class A beautiful shopping center that someone just built and that it has, Starbucks and Chipotle and, a brand new grocery store. There's no way for me to add any value. So for me, that's a bond. And when you buy those kind of properties, like a triple net property, all you're really doing is hoping these tenants don't go out of business. But I will tell you, they do go out of business and they do move. Whereas the properties I'm buying, I could renovate them, remodel them, reposition them, knock some of it down, add, put additions, do out parcels. So by getting creative, I'm able to add a lot of value. So that's what I'm looking for. That's the most important thing to me. Thank
you for sharing that, Todd. What Todd's basically saying is he's making money on the buy, further investing in the future. He knows if he adds value to a property, it's going to increase in the future versus buying a property that's at full value now. It only probably has one way, and that's to potentially go down if a tenant leaves and it's a big tenant or whatever it is. So that's pretty cool. And I've done the same thing. I've always looked to add value in my properties. I appreciate you sharing that, Todd. I think that really helps for me to see that I'm on the right path, because you definitely have more experience than me in that field. Okay, let's talk about the biggest trends in commercial real estate. And I'll give you a little pretext. I'm 20 minutes away from Google, from Facebook, from all these tech companies, right? This is a tech mecca where I'm at. We bought this building. I bought it. It was I don't know if you saw it on my Instagram, but it was a warehouse, and I built this. I had doubled the square feet to add value to the property, to maybe leverage the property and buy another one like you were kind of doing. In California, however, a lot of companies are moving out. If you look at what's happening in downtown San Francisco, it's a travesty. I've been in San Francisco for 30 years, originally from Russia. And it's sad. Old Navy's moving out. Targets are closing. Hermes is getting robbed on maybe a monthly. I don't know if that's exaggerated, but it's happening. It's just, you go downtown, and if I go downtown with the kids, I'm almost like, I feel like I have to bring some type of protection. It's killed the commercial real estate market, not only downtown, but it's also killed the office buildings because we weren't required to come into offices based on our way of thinking out here. Has that happened in South Florida, or have you seen a boom in commercial real estate and complete opposite?
That answer is multifold, because the first part is people ask me why I don't buy properties outside of the state of Florida. And that's because, one, I know my state, and two, my daughter's out in California in college right now in LA, and your state, whatever your political beliefs may be, is not being run well. And
Agreed.
I'm not trying to point fingers. I'm just saying, I went down to San Diego to look at colleges with her last year before we went. And I said, you can't even go to college here. What you have going on in California right now, and I have friends who went up to San Francisco saying the same message like you're saying, is not happening at all in South Florida. One, everybody went back to work. Our state reopened very quickly. And that's a different side of the story altogether. But we don't have going on it's just not fair to the people paying taxes and living there. Yeah. I mean, you have Salesforce is saying that their big convention that's like iconic in San Francisco. Yep. And I know that he was born and raised in San Francisco. Yep. He's always wanted it there, brings a fortune. He's going to move the Salesforce annual convention out because you can't keep the people safe. So that's the
problem. And Oracle moved out. Larry Ellison moved out because of the same problems. And, I think we could spend probably another hour on talking about the poorly run politics of it all, and how the streets aren't safe and so forth. And I mentioned earlier in the podcast that I had a beautiful condo, 1,200 square foot patio overlooking downtown San Francisco. I can't rent it, nothing, because there's so many drug addicts walking down the street. It's insane. But South Florida seems to not have this effect at all. And are people going back to work in South Florida? Like, are you required to go into the office, or is it more lax than it's been?
I mean, I can't speak for every business, but while I love some of the things that became like work from home like I'm in real estate, so code violation meetings and hearings and stuff like that still stayed on Zooms, which is fantastic for time management. But for the most part, everybody's been going back to work. Now, I will put this on your podcast today. You're all going back to work in California too at some point, because that's the way the world is going. You're just not there yet, but you're all going back to work. Everybody in New York is going back to work. And the reason you want to go back to work is because how does a young guy or girl out of college ever advance in their career working from home? How are they ever going to network? And it was Jamie Dimon who said he was one of the first person to go back to work. And he goes, and none of the young people wanted to go. And he's like, but here I'm so available to them that the offices are working on 10, 20% at this time. Imagine you graduate school, you could have lunch with Jamie Dimon, but you don't want to go back to work because you want to be on Zoom. So in order for people to advance, and we are social creatures, everybody's going to go back to work differently. I think we could work better and we could work outside the office, but everybody's going to go back to work little by little, and you'll get there in California.
I hope so. I think it's killed a lot of the businesses. It's killed downtown SF, like the Mon Pa sandwich shops, the Italian sandwich shops that were around forever. They're all kind of destroyed by these policies, and I do hope they do go back to work. And I'm glad to hear that Florida's or even South Florida's commercial real estate is not really affected, because, Todd, I'll tell you, empty buildings here. Facebook is dropping space, Google is dropping space, and it's kind of scary because I've met some people at like car events that have all these commercial buildings, and now they can't rent them out. It's insane. So that's great that South Florida is not having that problem, and I think that's because of the policies that were set before, and we're just seeing the effects of what we've done in the wrong way now. All right. So top tips for success in real estate. You kind of started, I would say, on pretty much from 25 on your own, maybe even younger. What are some, like, if someone's out there trying to be inspired by Todd, and I am as well, what are some of the tips you're going to give somebody that is trying to build a portfolio or start in real estate?
I've mentored so many hundreds of people, and every single week I have people come to my office and I meet with them one-on-one. And of course, I don't charge them anything. I want to help people. The number one thing I tell people is don't be afraid to give it a shot. And, I was with someone yesterday. He's actually a local firefighter. And he told me the amount of money he had. It was a nice amount of money. And he was 27 years old. And I could see he was just scared. And I had to actually break it down. I said, if you lost every penny of this by the time you're 28, nothing's going to change in your life. You're going to be mad, but it's not going to change your life. You still have a job. You're still young. You're still healthy. But people fear giving it a shot. They think it's super hard and super complicated, and it's not. It's really not. It's no different than managing your own home or condo that you own. It's the same kind of thing. But people are afraid to get started, and they really shouldn't, because anyone who's done it for a long time will tell you they wish they started sooner. They wish they bought more.
Isn't that interesting? It's if you don't swing the bat, you're not going to hit a home run. And that's a great tip. Just get in there, and it's like you'll figure it out, right? You're gonna do well. And at an earlier, younger age, I feel also it's important to say, hey, it's okay to take risk, because that's the time you can make up for it later on. And I think you would agree with me on that, correct?
100,000%. Yep. The earlier the better.
What are some of the biggest mistakes people make in commercial real estate that are starting out, or even in your career trajectory? What would you say is something for someone to avoid?
I can list a million mistakes that people make when they go into real estate. Of course, the first mistake would be is not getting started, obviously. But a lot of people think that, they're going to buy a property and just like it's a bond. And even if you buy, like I was saying earlier, because some people do like to buy. I have friends who buy them all the time, like a Starbucks or a CVS or a Walgreens. And actually, CVS and Walgreens are perfect examples. They kind of feel like, well, I bought it. This is the lease and this is the rent. So I'm set. And now if you look all over the news, Rite Aid, CVS, and Walgreens are shutting down hundreds and hundreds of stores nationwide.
Everywhere. Yep.
If you look at what that model is, you now have a 15,000 square foot building with virtually no windows, which has very little use. And I see a lot of these things. I actually buy a lot of these buildings secondhand, and they become like beauty supplies or medical places. But you're not going to get that forever. And they're buying them out of state in places they don't know, because they're saying, well, Starbucks is the tenant. The problem is Starbucks may not be the tenant forever. And if it's not, what do you have? And I've seen a lot of people lose a lot of money like that because they think Starbucks will never close a location. So that's really one of the biggest mistakes. The second biggest mistake, which is the general one, is people just trust what they're given. So if a broker says this is the deal and these are the leases, they don't really do any homework. And before you buy a property, you need to meet with the tenants, because just because the lease says, Bob Smith pays $2,000 a month, you may meet with Bob Smith and says, well, that's what the lease says, but I haven't paid that ever. I've only been paying $1,200. And now you just bought a building with expectation and a tenant with a different one. And the truth is you're going to lose that battle, because he's not going to pay the $2,000. If that's not the market rent, you have a problem. So make sure you take your time and do your own due diligence on it.
Wow, that's a great tip. I've never actually heard anybody give that tip in terms of really meet the tenant and make sure they're in good standing, because the last thing you want to do is get into a property and know that this guy's telling you to screw yourself. He's not paying rent, right? That's crazy. And you're relying on that for your mortgage or for your loan on the property. One thing I noticed on your Instagram channel, and I love the name again, Life According to Todd. That's such a cool name. You mentioned you're always staying hungry. There was a video you posted that said, hey, I bought my first property 25 years ago. I'm still buying properties. I'm still doing the same thing. How important is it to stay continuously hungry versus becoming kind of complacent with everything that you have and taking your foot off the gas?
For you to be great at anything, I believe you have to have a lot of passion and you have to love it. If you don't love commercial real estate, you could buy a few properties and say, fine, now I have enough, I'm set, just like some people buy stocks. But if you love something, whether it's golf, tennis, or real estate, you'll stay hungry and passionate. And one of the greatest things that's happened to me by giving back so much, because I always believe if you give, things are going to happen, is it's totally put a whole new battery in my pack. Because I had a guy 17 years old, and I talked to a lot of teenagers, but 17 years old, got on a plane, flew down to meet me for the day because he wants to learn real estate. And I'm like, and he's like, my dream is to own real estate. And I'm like, I am so lucky and so blessed. I got to work harder so I could be a better role model for these guys. But that's like the greatest part of it, is that you get that feeling back. So you will always stay hungry if you love what you do.
So it sounds to me that as a person or personally, you get energized by helping people or by giving them advice of things that you've learned. Is that accurate to say?
It's 100% accurate, because I've been doing this a long time. And like I said, I don't have lots and lots of toys personally. I have a lot of stuff. So I shouldn't say that. What I say, people will call me out on that. But material objects don't inspire me at all. That's not what I'm doing it for. I'm not buying more property so I could buy another house in Aspen. I love what I do. But what I found is as I started working, I started just bringing some interns that were high school interns into my office years back. And from that's how it grew. From then I started doing podcasts, and then I wrote my book, as I said, we'll talk about.
Yeah, we will.
Then I even started with the Instagram to help more and more people. But there's nothing more rewarding. I have a young guy that came to me as an intern when he was in high school, and he said he definitely didn't want to go to college. And I said, go take some classes, figure it out. He turned 18. He graduated high school in June. He immediately took his real estate test. He got licensed. This was a kid, and I'll tell you, this guy, he would come in every day to my office to see me. He'd come in like sweatpants and a hoodie and slides. And I said, this is not going to work. This guy comes in. He's the top leasing agent now in 3 months. He started with leasing. He's only leasing apartments because that's an easier path. He's not in commercial. I said, you cannot work for me. Go figure it out. He got a job. He's doing leasing. He's making really good money for his age for an 18-year-old. He still has a second job at night promoting nightclubs. But this guy's in my office every day. He comes in a suit and button-down shirt, dressed like I do. And he was so excited. He goes, I just bought my 4th suit. He's got his 4th suit. He's 18 years old. So you want to get motivated, do something and see this 18-year-old kid whose whole life is ahead of him, and you have a small piece in that.
Let's talk a little bit about that. This is a tip for me that I personally want to get out of you. In the Bay Area, people dress down a lot. Like the tech guys, you'll see Mark Zuckerberg, one of the richest people, CEO. He looks like I'll say a bum. In terms of like coming into the office, there's no button ups here. It's kind of a different style. And in commercial real estate and in real estate in general, it's different. But I've been trying to also dress nicer and also be more presentable. How important is that in just being a man and getting your point across, having the confidence? How important is it being well prepped, well groomed, well dressed?
It's everything. And I hate to tell everybody this, but you are being judged. People do put a value on you for what you look like. And although I hate that people judge you by the cars you drive and the watches you wear, we're all guilty of it. I mean, I saw a young guy the other day out, and he couldn't have been 20 years old, and he was wearing an $80,000 gold watch. I'm like, how? And even I'm doing the same thing. I don't know if parents bought it, or he was a YouTube billionaire, or he's a Saudi sheik. I have no clue, but we all do it. When people tell me that all the time, I hear it in my office because I make everybody dress nice, and I dress every day in a suit. Other than Fridays, we have dressed down a little. But they always bring up Mark Zuckerberg, and I laugh, and they say Steve Jobs. Well, I'll tell you what. When you're a multi-billionaire who graduated from Harvard or dropped out of Harvard, you could do stuff like that. At that point, you don't need anything from anybody. You at that point are a master of the universe. But if you're out trying to build your career, network, and meet people, you're never, as a man at least, you're never overdressed in a suit. I could wear a suit like this with a button-down shirt, and I could go to any restaurant, and I'm always going to be not too overdressed and not too underdressed. But if I go into a business meeting and I'm wearing jeans and a t-shirt, even if it's an expensive t-shirt, and the guy I'm trying to do business with is older and he doesn't understand that, I'm going to lose the opportunity. So your dress is everything.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Todd. I'm definitely going to try to improve on that. And I think my wife will thank you for that in the future. So let's talk about your company, Current Capital Group. What inspired you to start your company, Current Capital Group? And what are some of the things that make the Current Capital Group unique?
So when I first started managing my own properties, it was like 1999, 2000, as I said. I started my company, it was under TN Property Management for Todd Nepola. And then I read a lot of books, a lot of books. And I was reading and someone said, if you're going to build a company and you want to name it after yourself, that means you ultimately want all the credit. And I said, that's true. So I was thinking about currency and current, staying new to the times, money. So I kind of still had the Wall Street in me, and I kind of wanted real estate. So I started Current Capital as an umbrella, and I said, well, it'll be Current Capital. So I think it was 2002, I changed the name from TN to Current Capital. And it's just ever since then it's flowed. But I've always enjoyed having Current Capital, and I started the company to venture into more property management. We did it in a small capacity up until like 2005 and 6 and 7. And right around 2008, we exploded because so many properties in South Florida had so many vacancies.
Yeah.
We were getting new accounts left and right. So from that point on, we probably say 50% of our portfolio or more is third-party management.
And with third party management, what makes you guys unique? What do you, I know you'll add value to your tenants, but what would you say is like, why would someone choose, say, Current Capital versus another property management? What makes you different?
Our edge in management services is very simple. We act as if we're the owners because we own the exact same types of properties. So I don't manage big office buildings. I don't manage any multifamily because I don't own it. So if you trust us to manage your property, I will run your property exactly how I'll run my property. So if you like what I'm doing, you'll like what you're doing. And I tell my clients all the time, if you want to see what I spend on my properties, full disclosure, look at everything I do. So they believe that I'm doing for me what I'll do for them. And it's hard to find managers who will do that and that also own real estate. So it's aligned with their visions.
That's awesome. So you're basically sharing straight hands-on experience. You have the knowledge. You're not taking projects that you have no experience in some cases, and you're treating it as if it's your own. That's so important. And that kind of goes into everything. If you're hiring a marketing company, if you're hiring someone to consult you, you want them to consult you as if they're trying to better themselves or their position and treat you like family. If you hire someone that's just going to treat you like a number, and there are management companies out there that I know do that, they get the contract, they go to the next. They're not worried about you anymore. That's a fire you're playing with. So thank you for sharing that, Todd. That's excellent.
That though, for your viewers to know, it's not always like that when you're starting a business, because when I was starting my business, I did take on a lot of apartments, and I even took over one court receivership, and both of them worked out bad. But when you're a new business and you're growing your business, you want to take as much business as you can. But I let both of them go, and I never did them again. But I had to learn the hard way that I was only great at what I'm great at. You can't be great at everything. So if you find a company that says they're great at everything, run as fast as you can, because people aren't great at everything.
That's a great lesson as well for the viewers and myself, and I'm learning that as well, Todd. Although I'm good at a lot of things, I can install outlets, hang TVs, remodel a building. You have to get people that are particularly great at something, is what I've learned. Is that correct? And they'll better you. Yep. Exactly. Thank you for that. Where do you see Current Capital in the next 5 years, Todd? What is in the plans and in the books? Don't share any big secrets with your competitors, but
I love competitors because they keep me hungry. And this year has been a very interesting year. We've actually bought no properties all year, and not to be pessimistic, I don't see it changing in the last 60 days of the year. The market's been really tight. Lending's been tight. Sellers aren't realistic. Buyers aren't going to budge and pay those prices with so much uncertainty. So this year, as far as growth goes on buying properties, it'll be zero absorption of properties. With that being said, that's how business cycles run. We don't judge a business year by year. We judge it over a longer time horizon. So that's okay. Knock on wood, South Florida and all of Florida's market's been strong. So the tenants are doing well. We've been using this time to redevelop a lot of properties and, work with the tenants one-on-one. I personally been using a lot of this time that I have more free time to help other people and mentor people and do things like that. So there's always time to add value. But as far as growing and adding properties, myself and my clients have bought nothing this year.
That's awesome. And you know what? That just shows you that you really don't need to pull the trigger on something without really feeling good about it, right, Todd? You have to find the right property. You have to find value in the property, and you, as we mentioned both, I think you make money on the buy. And right now, Florida is like so crazy booming; it's unrealistic in some cases. People are overvaluing things, and the interest rate. The interest rate is not has not been favorable to the economy. I would say, so. How do you get around such a bad interest rate? What do you feel is happening with that? What do you want to happen with the interest rate?
I want the interest rate to go back down. Of course, I'm a real estate guy, so I owe a lot of money. Interest rates right now aren't historically high. People that are new to this in the last 10, 15 years, they haven't seen a down market. They also haven't seen high interest rates. When I bought my first property, the first loan I got was 10%.
Oh, wow.
It was like, wow, 10%. That's amazing. Rates were just 14%.
Wow.
And that was in June. in December, my loan from the next bank was 9%. And it pretty much kept on going down, and it stayed around the 6% range for a long, long time.
Yeah.
It wasn't really till COVID hit that rates just dropped to zero. And now all of a sudden people thought 3% was going to stay forever. I have a lot of loans in the threes, but I know
Same.
that's not going to stay like that. But I'll never buy a deal based on the 3% or the 4% or the 5% interest rate being the pivot. So
Wow, I love that.
stay away from that.
I see. So you're not focusing on the interest rate at all. In some cases, it's going to go up, it's going to go down. You could refi, you could get interest only loans. There's so many different variables. You're really focusing on the property, it sounds like, to add the value, because you know the interest rate could be changed, but the property or the location, well, you can't move your location, right? You can't pick up that building and move down the block.
Pick up and go. If you could, I'd move to even better neighborhoods. But if you have a good property, you should never get over leveraged. You'll always be okay. There'll be up cycles and down cycles. But if you look at it over a timeline of, my timeline with real estate is forever. So where interest rates are this year is irrelevant to me, because I believe in 2025, we'll be back down at least a point or two. But we're going to have another year of this rates for sure.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for that. All right. And you wrote a book, Keeping It Real on Commercial Real Estate. There it is. You look great on the cover. Tell me a little bit about what inspired you to write this book, or go into details as much as you like. I'm really enjoying this interview. Thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Sam. So the book came after my interns, and I said, it's great to have interns come in and you reach a certain amount of people. But I had, 8, 10 people every summer coming in, and these were young people. And then from there, like I said, I started to get into podcasts, and I started to reach more people. And I said, how could I reach more? Now, I'm a big reader. I read a lot of books. My goal is to break 60 books this year, and I will do it. I'm well on track to break 60 books. So I said, you write a book. So I decided to write a book. And when I wrote the first book, I hired an editor to help me, who was a very smart guy. And they took everything, they took it to the publisher, they put the whole book together, and they sent it to me to review. And I said, this is terrible. I hate this. I got to start all over again. So writing a book is way harder than I ever dreamed it was.
Okay.
Then someone said to me, write the book to somebody. Like, who is your audience? And I said, oh, my audience is my interns. And then I rewrote the book, and I wanted to keep it under 200 pages. That's what I did. So the book I wrote on real estate isn't just for people who want to invest in real estate the way I do and being an owner operator. It explains how you could invest in REITs, publicly traded companies, how you could buy triple net assets, all the different ways to get into real estate. Obviously, I recommend everybody buys their own real estate because it's the best way to do it, but not everybody wants to. But when I started writing this book, I felt a little awkward saying, I don't want to be the guy out there pushing my books and I'm trying to make money, because that's not what I do. I earn my money in real estate. So I said, I'm going to give all the proceeds of this book to charity, every single day. So I will make zero on this book, and all the time I spent and all the money I spent, a lot of money to write it, I'll give it all away. And by doing that, I am not embarrassed whatsoever to tell them, buy the book. It's a great book. And I tell people, you're doing a good deed too, because you're buying a book and all the money goes to charity. So the first charity we donated to was a company called Crew Network, an organization which gets minorities and females involved in commercial real estate. Where the second batch of money will go, I don't know, but it's a great book, and I've been giving tons of them away and selling tons of them. So it's been a lot of fun.
I'm going to have to buy a copy for sure, and I'll let you know what I think of it. I'm not a big reader. When did you start reading? I'm going to be honest with you and say I'm guilty of sometimes watching crap on Instagram. I've been trying to limit that. And I'm not, I used to read, but with 3 young kids, it's kind of hard for me to focus on the book at times. When did you start reading? You mentioned 60 books. At what point in time were you like, this is my goal?
Well, I'll be personal and be honest. I don't know if I even really kind of knew how to read, probably till around 7th or 8th grade, because I was raised in the New York public school systems, and they didn't teach us really anything. I certainly didn't know how to write the way Floridians did.
Yeah.
So from there, I wound up following the path of just getting out of school and getting to community college and figuring it out. And I guess when I was around 21, 22 years old, somehow I came across Tony Robbins, and I fell in love with him. And I said, I got to buy this guy's book. And his book is probably, I'm going to guess, 400 pages, Waking the Giant Within. And I sat down and I read the book, and I was like, wow, I read a whole book. And it made me realize that all the education that I didn't get because I didn't believe in school. I was the guy who said history happened. Who cares about it? Now I'm a history buff. So all the things I lacked in school, I said, I could educate myself. And then I realized the people who write books, they've been writing books. These people have 25, 35 years of experience in a book. And most books are 200 something pages. I said, could you imagine if you could read one book a month? I said, you'd be getting 500 years of experience a year.
Crazy.
And it became addicting. So now I wake up every single morning and I read every single day. And I read about everything. I tell people I don't just read business books. And I'm into working out and marathons and triathlons. I read on that. I'm married. I always tell the joke. So every time my wife is mad at me, I get a book on how to have a successful marriage. So I read everything I love, but it's all basically biography, self-help, history. So I don't really read any novels, but that reading has educated me to a degree that I honestly think I'm smarter than a lot of kids who graduate from Harvard because I went to the school of hard knocks.
I agree. I think there's something, I also went to community college for 4 years, which is sad. But at the same time, it's, I got accepted to USC's business school, my family didn't have money to put me through it, and I started a business. But I feel like nowadays you could learn so much more on the internet through individuals like yourself, through other mentors that are genuine versus like clickbait people. There's a different type of person, and you're definitely in that genuine category. I feel like I know it. There's a lot of people on Instagram and so forth saying they own these things and it's more of a show. But I love the fact that you're genuine and you come off strong. For me, the reason I started YouTube was I wanted to give back as well, kind of like you're doing. And I learned a lot on YouTube, how to swim, because my parents never took me out. So I took a YouTube swim, how to swim, passed the test and got my scuba diving license and almost died in Parrot Cay doing it. But overall, I learned so much stuff. And I think for people to read and to do research on YouTube or Instagram and follow the right people, it's such a better educational tool than actually maybe some university or some degree, where now it feels like they're taught how to think, not how to think creatively and think outside the box. And that's what I'm noticing. And one thing, living in California and having daughters and a young son, I'm a little worried about that. So I totally need to get into the reading game, and I think you've inspired me. I'll check back with you to see if I was able to keep up with that momentum. I want to add one more thing. This goes back, guys, to what Todd has said in the past in the Instagram video. He's like, hey, I want to keep improving. I'm not settled. I'm not going to be complacent. I'm not going to sit in one position. It seems like by reading, you're constantly developing yourself and improving yourself and really striving to do better. Would you say that's accurate?
A 1,000,000%. I love what you just said earlier about, Instagram and YouTube, that there's a lot of guys out there telling you about all these things that they could do for you if you buy their program. And I'm very jaded towards that because I happen to know a lot of these guys. I'm like, but you're not doing what you're selling. And that's okay as long as you represent that, but don't mislead people. Yeah. Whereas there's also guys on Instagram. I was having this conversation. You got guys like Ray Dalio, who's worth, I don't know, $20-30 billion. And he's giving investment advice for free. Like, crazy. How are you not listening to this guy? Like, it doesn't really get better. But even like I was saying before, like Salesforce, like Mark Benioff writes a book. Like, I don't have access to Mark Benioff, but in his 300 pages, I learned about him, his grandfather, his father, all his mistakes in business, all the things he's happy about. And it's 250, 300 pages. I get to utilize these skills that these people are teaching me, whether it's reading or videos, and I get to take it in. And I get to apply it to my own life. And I say, what would Mark Benioff do? I'm reading right now the Arnold Schwarzenegger book, so he just wrote a book. Like, whatever you think of Arnold Schwarzenegger, you got to give the guy a lot of credit. Yeah. So any tip this guy could give me, I want to take that and I'll apply it to myself. The stuff that doesn't apply, like how we said he worked out and lifted 40,000 pounds of weight a day. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. Yeah. But the things he does that apply to me, I'm only worried about what I could take out of it, the little nuggets, and go apply it to myself. And that's what reading and YouTube will do for you.
That's wonderful. I think you've put it very well. It's just you're getting so much experience out of such a compact book where you're not going to get that anywhere else. And you know what? That inspired me. In your book, you mentioned that you talk about not only investments in, say, tangible properties, but all across the board. What would someone really take from your book that really will motivate them? What are some of the things why is it important for someone to read your book? I would say, I know you'll probably share your story in there, and I do find you fascinating, but tell me a little bit about why you think someone really needs to read your book, or how would it help them?
Again, not trying to give anybody financial advice, just
Sure.
my opinion. There is no better asset class that we should all be invested in other than real estate. That doesn't mean you shouldn't diversify, but I know far too many people right now who are in their 70s and even older, and they saved money in 401ks and they put money in the market, but then every month they had to deplete that. And I'm going to tell you, I have family members in this position that were very comfortable, but as they're aging out, they're running out of money. And that's the scariest damn thing in the world. However, if you own a piece of real estate, even if it's one property, you don't run out of money because the equity in the real estate doesn't change. You live off the cash flow from the rents.
Yeah.
So you could do that with dividends from stocks and bonds, but you're not going to get the same return. You're not going to get the same appreciation. You're not going to get the same tax benefits. So to me, whether you want to buy the CVS or you want to invest in your own property, whatever it is, you have to be aware that there's better ways to protect yourself in the future. And that is real estate. And I'm not a broker trying to sell it. I don't want to sell it. I want to buy it all. But that's the class.
That goes back. I had one of America's top real estate agents on the podcast. She works for the agency. And she also mentioned, that's people's retirement. It's people's biggest investment is real estate. What's happening, I see, and she mentioned in this podcast, was a lot of people are not able to sell the properties because a lot of millennials and younger generation are now moving back in with the parents. So they're kind of, before it was like, hey, I'm going to sell my multi-million-dollar or $1 million property and I'm going to retire somewhere and so forth. Is that happening in South Florida where a lot of younger people are now having to move back in with their parents, and that's kind of locking maybe potentially their home?
I mean, I think that's unfortunately or fortunately, the way the parent sees it, it's happening nationwide. I mean, truthfully, the cost of apartments in South Florida has skyrocketed too. I think we're second, third, fourth most inexpensive place to live in the entire country right now.
Wow.
So you have that burden, but moving home with the parents, I don't think that's a great idea. I don't invite my kids back home. They got to kind of go figure it out. I'd rather them rough it up a little bit and live in a tough neighborhood maybe, but it is a big problem. The other big problem, as you said, is these people who buy houses, they have this beautiful multi-million-dollar house, and their plan is that I'm going to sell this house and retire. That means you're going to downsize. If you had invested in investment properties, you never have to downsize.
Wow.
You can maintain that house till the day you leave this planet.
Oh, wow. That's a big statement. I hope we get one of those Instagram clips with that statement, with just saying, hey, if you invested properly, you're not downsizing, and it's paying off your Rolex purchases, your car payment, whatever, your boat in Miami. Everyone's got a boat. Someone told me if I ever move to Miami, I have to make friends with people that own boats. All right. So let's go into it. And thank you for sharing that about the book. I'm definitely going to purchase a copy. It goes to a good cause. We're going to get off real estate here. We're going to talk a little bit more about your the fun side, the private life, so to speak. Nothing really crazy. But obviously, I've seen you on TV on The Real Housewives of Miami. When I first saw you, I was like, this guy's a strong man. There was a couple episodes on there that where it got into family and you had to put your foot down. And I respected that. I think a lot of people don't, nowadays people kind of walk around eggshells and so forth. You came in strong. That was kind of cool. And I was like, this is good. I like this guy on TV. And it made me want to watch even more. What is it like to be on The Real Housewives of Miami, or be a husband on The Real Housewives of Miami, I should say?
It's never boring.
Okay.
I kind of married it because my wife was on the show years ago, but then the show went on break for 8 years. So when I met her, there was no show. There was really no popularity to the Miami franchise.
Oh, okay.
Right after we got engaged, that was in 2019. In early 2020, they came in and said, hey, they're going to start the show again. So they obviously wanted to bring her back. She's very important to the show. So I came into it. I know nothing. I'm not really, I'll say, the biggest fan of some of this reality TV because it's reality and it's edited in a way to get the viewers to watch it. Mm-hmm. So viewers think they know the whole story, but you missed out on the other hour and a half of this conversation, you just got the stuff they want to show you. So a lot of times, everybody, I want to be fair, everybody, in my opinion, gets caught on the wrong side because like, wait, that's not quite what happened, but the viewer doesn't see that. So I've learned, my wife is like Teflon. It doesn't phase her whatsoever. But to me, I'm like, but I want to explain that's not what happened. And you really can't. So it's like, just let it go.
I see. So they create the drama. Obviously, that's what really catches people's attention. But you got to have some tough, like alligator skin to be on that show where you can't, take some jabs, especially for the women's side. I see comments and so forth, and it's kind of crazy. But has this helped you in any journey of your real estate life? Would you say being on the show, people notice you, go, "Hey, Todd managed my company or my property, excuse me," and really try?
My world of real estate, no, it hasn't. I mean, certainly if I was a residential realtor, I could align more, but there's not a lot of people that I could work for. I have a very small group of kind of clients that own the properties we want to manage. I certainly don't think it's hurt.
Yeah.
The greatest thing I say about being on the show is I learned very quickly that not even the people, they don't have to be fans, but they recognize who you are from the show. And because of that, I always say, it's like, I know the guy who does the sports or the news I'm not going to bother him, but I say, oh yeah, there's like Steve Shapiro, the local sports guy. So because you know who people are, I realize people know who I am. So for that, I always make sure to be nicer to people because I'm like, they actually know who you are now. So if you do something wrong, if you don't hold the door for everybody, say, I saw Todd, he was the bad guy. So it forces you to just be a little tiny bit kinder. So that's a nice thing because, if you know people are looking and they know who you are, you'll step it up a little.
I think that's a good thing. And it probably goes back to what you're saying is you got to look presentable at all times too, because people are, again, judging you based on what they see.
Look and act.
Has it gotten you into any like cool restaurants where you're like, hey, that's the guy from the show, or, where you didn't have to wait in line or there was no reservation available and you're in?
It hasn't gotten me into any restaurants. I never had a problem with that. I mean, to be fair with that, I think that money is going to get you into a restaurant way faster than anything else.
I see.
It's fun for my wife. I've gotten to meet a lot of people out of it, very interesting people. And people always say, what big celebrities do you meet? The truth is, the nicest people I met and some of the people I thought were the greatest were just regular people who were fans who wanted to meet my wife and say hello. And you see the way different people come over to interact and how some are very nice and some have nice stories. So I've met a lot of really great people because of the show. But, I'm not trying to get into any restaurant like that anyhow, so it's okay.
Yeah, I gotcha. And do people come up to you and like, because they watch you, right? There's studies on this. If someone sees someone so many times, they think they know that person. Do people come up to you like randomly as if they like totally know you and you kind of get thrown off by that? How does that feel?
Well, they do totally know you. Yeah. And they know where I live and they know things about me.
Or they know the clips Bravo put out, right?
Well, they know enough. And I'll tell you, just to rewind that, when I first started dating Alexia, we'd go on the first couple of dates and like people would walk up and be like, hi, Alexia, how's, about Peter and Frankie and this. And I was like, people walk up, they know more about you than I do. It's just weird. Like, it's like a very weird feeling, but they do know you. And everybody who's at any of these shows, you have to expose your real family life. Now, obviously everybody should understand it's reality TV, it's edited. And these people, they don't drink all day long and go on boats all day long. They have real lives. But when you see the show, no matter who it is, you are seeing their spouses, their kids, their homes, their lifestyles, the way they dress, the way they talk. So you do know them, which is very different than being a real actor like Leonardo DiCaprio. He plays a role. He's really not the guy from the Titanic. Yeah. He's somebody, you don't really know him, but you know reality stars.
What I've seen about him is he's always on yachts. That's what
well, maybe he was really the Wolf of Wall Street.
That's right.
Yeah, you don't really know an actor.
What's a big challenge for being on the reality show? Like, what is the downside of it? I know the upside is you get attention. That creates a network, right? In reality, you could open up businesses, you meet great people. But what may be some of the downsides or something you want to point out?
It's very time consuming for my wife. So, they film really for 3 months, even though she's doing work related to it throughout the year. Like even now, next week, we have to go to New York and I'm going to go with her because it's Watch What Happens Live. She'll be on Andy Cohen's show. The following week, she's got to go to Vegas. I can't go because I have a charity organization that's actually hers that I'm going to stay back for. So there's stuff all year. But the 3 months, 3.5 months she films, it's 5 days a week from morning till night. And you kind of lose a lot of personal time, even though I'm not filming that. Of course, it's her, but she has to wake up in the morning, do hair, makeup, get everything ready, go film a scene, come back, get changed, do hair, makeup for another whole scene, then go do another scene and come home. So the likelihood of her wanting to go out and do anything those 5-6 nights, I mean, she's beat and drained. So it's a big toll. It's a very big.
It's very demanding, and I don't think the audience even knows that how grueling of a time period that is, and how demanding. I mean, just setting up a podcast and turning on cameras and doing this and being ready, it's not easy, and that's on such a higher level. I would imagine that the people that are doing it are exhausted. Let's ask a fun question here. Who is your favorite, aside from yourself or whoever you want to point out, favorite house husband on any other show, or even on maybe one on your show and then maybe on another show? Like, who would you say you met this, like, that guy's cool?
I've been so lucky to meet so many guys from the show, and they've all really been fantastic, and they're super nice. I mean, I know you said the agency. I met Mauricio. He's such a guy. I mean, voting for on Dancing with the Stars. I love him. I think he's fantastic. The guy to me who every man should aspire to be like is Marisol's husband, Steve. Steve McNamara is an absolute gentleman. He's a gem. He's sweet. He's loving, but he's a man. I mean, he'll drink the whiskey. He'll cook the barbecue, but he is by far, like, if you want to have a role model of what a guy should be, that's the guy. But I've met so many other great guys from the show, so I don't want to be unfair to them. But to me, Steve, my wife would always say, where does Steve come from? He's like, he's just amazing. He's always dressed perfectly. I mean, I'm going to give it to Steve McNamara.
I love that. I think he'll be appreciative of you. That's great. All right. You've mentioned children. We're going to get into a little bit of like raising strong kids. What are some advice? You've mentored a lot of people that are into real estate, but also I would imagine you're mentoring these young individuals and also building their character and their personality and their confidence. Give some advice on like raising kids, strong men. I don't know if you have daughters. You do. What is some advice, and what are some of the things that you could pass down to me and to the audience of really being a good dad and being there, et cetera? You mentioned not letting them back in the house. I'm sure if your daughters did come in, you'd let them in, but tell us a bit about that.
My method works for me, and everybody has a different method. And I always say, everybody has all these beliefs, but, the kids all turn out different. So my kids, I got divorced many years ago. My children have lived with me full time for many years. So being a single dad to 2 teenage daughters was challenging, because if I had boys, obviously I related a little bit more. But what I do with my kids is I tell them the truth. And I think too many parents don't want to tell them the truth and tell them the downsides and the upsides. And I very, very rarely will ever tell my kids no, because I tell them it's their life to make it great or to screw it up. So I let them make a lot of decisions. I also hold them accountable. So like when they want to apply for colleges, my younger one's now applying, well, she's already fully applied, but she's got to go out. And if she wants help, she wants SAT tutors, she wants guitar lessons, but go figure it out on your own. I'll pay for it, but you got to figure it out. But I let them really experiment with things. So my younger daughter wanted to go to NYU last summer for a program. Figure it out, go. But what I won't tell them is no to everything. Because when I went to college, I noticed the kids whose parents were always on top of them and always doing everything. They cracked. And these were the kids who had big problems. And all of a sudden, this freedom, they couldn't handle it. I watch my older daughter, who's now in college, who's had the freedom to do whatever she's kind of wanted. When she got to college, she's not going crazy. She's like more of the same. So it doesn't stimulate them as much. But I let them experiment and try things. It's their life. Doesn't mean it'll work for everybody, but it's what I believe in.
No, I thank you for sharing that. It seems like too much pressure may not be a good thing, and it can cause a crack, just like pressure does, right? That's pretty awesome. Let's talk a little bit about you personally. If you could go back in time, what advice would you give to your young self, 15 to 20 years old? What would it be?
I've always been very lucky that I never really worry about things. I don't stress about things. And I don't think anything's a problem until it's really a problem. And so many people nowadays have so much anxiety. And I feel terrible for them, because when I listen to them, they're worried about things that didn't happen. Mm-hmm. So I've always been lucky in that sense. So from that perspective, I stick to more of the same. And I know that I was actually right in that one, not to worry about things until they're a problem. Where I would push myself more was to take more risks because I kick myself now for a lot of things I didn't do. I don't kick myself for anything I did do. I even had a marriage that didn't work. I don't regret that because I got two great kids out of it. I regret things I didn't do, and I think I should have pushed harder, which is why I'm still working hard now to make sure I keep pushing myself.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. Just to add to that, audience, the worrying thing. I'm a warrior. Not a warrior like a fighter, but I worry a lot. But someone also mentioned before, if you worry before it happens, you're just worrying twice. And you may be worrying and it may not happen. So you're just going to exhaust yourself. And I've been working on that. I think that's very important. Thank you for that, Todd. What you live, from what I understand and what I've seen, you live in the Porsche building, or do you have a condo in that building?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's pretty neat. I have a funny story with that, and I'll share with you. My wife and I, during the pandemic, we were at Carpaccio in Bal Harbour, and we had our baby, and this family turns around and they go, "Oh, cute baby." And they're talking, and my wife turns around and she goes, "That's the guy that built the Porsche building." And I'm like, "Sure he is." Like it's late. I'm trying to juggle two kids. And I met Gus that way. Gus Strahl, I believe is his last name, with Desert Development, which is a coincidence. I'm trying to get him on the podcast. He said he'll do it with Gil. How is it like living in the Porsche building, having your car be pulled up to your apartment? Is that something you say is like no regrets in being on the beach when the Porsche building, or is it, how would you describe it? Because we don't have that out here. So I'm trying to figure that out.
I've known Gil for many years. That's not why I'm in the building, because I was actually in another building. I was in Trump Tower, the building Gil actually lives in, before we moved over to Porsche. And I don't really want to ruin it for anybody. But, it's kind of like anything else. You think it's so creative and so clever and so crazy. And everybody who comes over is like, wow. But once I've been there for 6 years, it's like, it's kind of like when they park the cars. It's like that. That's what I meant earlier when I said no material object will keep you happy very long. So you think it's great, strangers think it's great, but once you have this, it's like anything else. Like, yeah, that's just how they park the cars.
That's funny. So it's just in the beginning, it's like everything else, right? You get it, you enjoy it for like that first month, it's eye-opening, and then everything from there is just like, well, it's just a regular thing. Yep, it's just a regular thing. All right, so Todd, where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years? What would make you at peace or comfortable, or what would you like to see out of the next 10 years or 5 years? I know those are two different time frames, but let's say in the future.
Of course, I want to continue to stay healthy. I work out a lot. That without your health, every single thing anyone talks about is completely useless, because your money's useless, everything's useless. So I do focus on a lot of health. I eat healthy, I work out. As far as business goes, of course, I want to continue to grow my company the same organic way I've been growing it, by buying out other properties and buying out other companies that do what I do. And as far as the new arena that I'm moving into is, I look forward to giving speeches and lecturing and to teaching people more about real estate. And now that my younger daughter will be leaving to college next year, I would travel more to do that. So that's why I'm building up the base now and putting my message out there. So right now I wouldn't want to travel because I want the last couple of months my daughter at home. But once I'm a so-called empty nester and I have no kids at home, my wife works a lot. So I would definitely want to get on the road and travel and, mentor younger people and talk in high schools and colleges and things like that about real estate. That's and cool. Give back.
That's cool, Todd. Thank you. And finally, we didn't touch on this, but I think we should. And a lot of people that I've had on, for their right mental mind state, they mentioned working out and staying healthy and exercising. How often at your age, you're 50 years old, you mentioned, do you work out, and how important is that to someone, or even an entrepreneur, or even just a man at your age?
Well, look, I'm going to be fair to the younger people too. I always ate healthy my whole life, and I always worked out. When I was very young and I was working my hardest and the longest hours when I first started buying real estate, I was going out too much, eating too unhealthy, and not sleeping enough. So I gained weight. I didn't get fat, but I was probably in the worst shape. And then I found triathlons and I got obsessed with that. I've even completed Ironman triathlons.
You have?
So I've gone the whole distance, and I'm running next week a half marathon with my brother just for fun. So you have got to take care of your body, because getting out there and getting fresh air, whether you're running, biking, swimming, or whether you're going to the gym and lifting weights, there is no better reliever of stress and pressure. And when you feel good, you're going to be so much more successful. Luckily, I'm not out of shape, but I could imagine, I know people who are, they just don't feel as confident as someone who's impressive. And I come across it. I have a friend who comes in, is actually in my office, and the guy's 6'5" and he's jacked and he's great looking. Like, I know this guy's got confidence for that, but he works out very hard to, to look in great shape. So your health is everything. So you got to take it seriously and don't slack on that.
Long-term investment. I appreciate it. Todd, thank you so much. Is there anything you want to add before we conclude this episode? It's up to you. I know you could share your Instagram. I mentioned it so many times, but anything you want to add to the audience would be great.
Yeah, the only thing I want to add is I want to thank you, Simon. I want to thank people like you, and thank you because you guys are doing this on your time and your dime to give back. And that's really what it's about. There's really the only value to you to do this is to help other people. And people have to realize when they're watching stuff like this, how much credit they have to give, because I can now go on YouTube for free and watch you and everything you set up and all the time invested. And I can turn you on and off and fast forward and rewind for free. And people like you are fantastic, and you're making the world a better place. And I appreciate you. And I'm glad you have me as a part of this and be a small part of it. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. And not only that, because you were my guest, my wife probably will treat me nice for like the next couple of weeks because she's a diehard fan of the show. She thought it was one of the coolest things. And I told her, I said, look, Veronica, I got Todd coming on. And
well, now you have to get my wife on. My wife is a business owner.
If she wants to come on, you're going to have my wife in the background right here with the biggest smile in her face, that moving away. I think your wife's one of the coolest people on the show. She says it like it is.
Yeah.
I really love that. I respect that. I grew up, again, I've seen it all. We'll talk about those things if we ever meet, but I would love for her to come on. So if you convince her,
I think I can make it happen. As long as your wife is a co-host with you.
Oh, she should do the interview. Listen, that would give me maybe 2 months of quiet time at home and comfort. I would probably get everything. I may get tea, I may get food, etc. This is going to be great. So please, if she wants to come on, and if you ever want to come on, let me know. If I'm ever in Florida, which I will be soon, actually.
Yes.
We did invest in a property there, so I have to see it, and I'll hit you up. But this has been an honor of mine. I look at you as someone that I can personally learn from. As you mentioned, there's years of experience in those books. There's years of experience on your Instagram and in your book. And I love learning from people like you. So genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for coming on and giving me this time. Thank you, Todd. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure to follow Todd. Make sure to purchase his book. He mentioned it's for a great cause. He gives the proceeds back to charity. I will be buying the book as well. I'm going to link it as well wherever it's sold on the description. I'll put all of Todd's information. He seems very approachable, very nice. His Instagram is straightforward advice from his life experience. And I truly enjoy it. I appreciate it. You could also catch him on The Real Housewives of Miami, staying out of trouble, getting out of those arguments, but really just enjoying his life. And Florida, what a time to be alive and have a good footprint in South Florida. I think it's amazing. You guys are blessed over there. So I know that's why you're always smiling. So this is a good thing. And the vitamin D helps.
That's right.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. Todd shared so much of valuable advice, anything from commercial real estate to life lessons to reading, the importance of it, to his book, Keeping It Real on Commercial Real Estate. Check it out. It's available for sale on Amazon. Todd, thank you so much for coming on the show and giving us a little bit more for free here to the YouTube viewers, real hardcore knowledge of what it takes to be a success, what it takes to look like a success, and some feedback or some insight on the Real Housewives of Miami as well. It was truly my pleasure. Guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Todd, thank you so much.